Now, I know I've said this several times, but if there's any kind of CEO out there that constantly lies through his teeth and really tries to manipulate his audience and his viewership, is no other than Bob Iger, the Disney CEO himself, who, by the way, really made a mockery of himself a couple of days ago by really just kind of discounting any kind of claims of a Disney boycott or any kind of number of fans that are shifting away from their films, shows, and theme parks, etc. He finally was able to really kind of shed some light on his thoughts about the boycott, quote-unquote, for Disney, and exactly what's going on with everything related to their brands of Star Wars, Marvel, Disney movies, and more. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into what's going on with Bob Iger. Now, a lot of you guys like to call him Bobby Boy, but Bob Iger really is a very incompetent CEO for multiple factors. We know that not only does he lie to interviewers and when he goes on camera, but he also really downplays a lot of significant issues that have been happening over at Disney, and that pretty much is exactly his ongoing theme, if you will, whenever he gets involved in a lot of these earnings calls or in these major interviews or goes on television, etc., etc. And when it comes to addressing this Disney boycott, which, by the way, guys, is very real, it's a mixture of a boycott and just pure disinterest among fans of their films, shows, and parks. Let's discuss. Now, with Bob Iger currently trying to focus on restructuring Disney by spending less and making less while also firing thousands of more employees, a part of the upcoming Disney purge, we talked about that yesterday, by the way, that will actually happen down the road, while also seeking smaller scale focused movies and shows to match up with their cost containment plan, he eventually addressed the apparent Disney boycott by delivering the following to everyone. Well, I would be lying if we didn't notice a downturn on our streaming platform, such as Disney Plus or our Disney parks, but I certainly don't believe it's a kind of boycott or movement by fans or our audience or properties from our locations. I just don't think that's the case at all. Look, everyone needs to realize it's a hotter summer than normal, so in cases like in Florida, the weather most certainly is lessening our foot traffic. As for our films, we see no problems with that at all, and I don't think it's related to any kind of boycott, nor will I admit to something like that because it's just out of touch with reality. I think that what we are really dealing with is cinema fatigue. I mean, this day and age we have many individuals that would rather watch on a streaming platform at home, like an example for us with Disney Plus. It's why we are seeing these films getting transferred from the cinema to media such as streaming and or Blu-ray far quickly than 3 or maybe even 4 years ago even. Now, guys, let me just stop here quick for a second about Bob Iger. Now, we know that Bob Iger is one of those heavily guarded CEOs. He'll say one thing on camera, and then behind the scenes, different things are happening with his view of Disney, Star Wars, Marvel, and just their regular Disney movies, etc. We already know that they had multiple emergency meetings that took place over at Disney between himself and the board, and how a lot of their upcoming earnings calls are going to display exactly what happened behind closed doors over there to kind of really get some info out to the shareholders and to really kind of give them a little bit more comfort as to what's going on with Disney. Now, the problem with this that I think is really something to do with the fact that Bob Iger does not want to admit that their 110% is a Disney boycott. I know a lot of you guys have been reaching out to me through the comments, through Twitter, etc., that you are all canceling your vacations, you're canceling your Disney, adventures over at the one in California or in Paris or even in Orlando, and switching over to either Universal or going on a cruise or just flat out doing something completely different around the world. And people are embracing that. There is a Disney boycott 100%, not just for the parks, but also for the movies. But I must add also, guys, that it's not just a boycott, there's also a major disinterest among fans. So it's a mixture of both. There's a lot of people that just don't flat out care anymore, to the point where it's not really a boycott anyway, but there's also people that are boycotting this to send a message to Disney that they are voting with their wallets, they're staying at home when it comes to the movies, they're not subscribing to Disney Plus, they're not spending their money on these expensive theme parks, must I add. It's just flat out crazy. And you know what? When we look at Bob Iger, this is nothing new. I want you guys to look up Howard Stern. Love the guy or hate the guy, that's fine. But at least he's a great outlet for shedding the truth, and he had Quentin Tarantino on, I believe it was back in 2015. Go ahead and look that up. Howard Stern, Quentin Tarantino, Disney. Just type that up. Quentin Tarantino exposes the living world out of Bob Iger, the living world out of Disney, and what they did to Quentin Tarantino, and how ruthless they really are when it comes to their greed. So, look that up. It'll really give you a different perspective on things in the literal sense. So, moving onwards here, he goes on to elaborate, so no, I don't see any kind of boycott going on with us. I think it's extremely misunderstood and blown out of context. Like I said, we noticed a downturn on all fronts, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a boycott or a restriction from our fans and audiences, purposely because of a set of certain beliefs and expectations. And like I said earlier, we don't start or get involved in any kind of culture war. We get to make that openly clear. We are not forcing any kind of message through our films or shows, just providing pure entertainment for our families to enjoy. So what's not to like by going to the cinema or enjoying our theme parks around the globe? I ask for everyone to don't believe everything that you hear, because we have nothing but great support for us here at Disney. So, again, I mean, it's pretty vivid at this point that Bob Iger will say anything that he has to say, save his image for the, common denominator. And we also have a lot of things happening, too, with the board. There's a big divide over at the board. We talked about this. Many members of the board want Kathleen Kennedy out. Many members also want to keep her over at Lucasfilm and are defending her. Now, we know that there are 3 producers standing by to take over that position, and there's a growing number of candidates as well, if and when the time comes, that Kennedy either gets fired or steps down completely from Lucasfilm. Now, we already know, we discussed this yesterday, she was fired as a producer for Mandalorian Season 4 and a new untitled Mandalorian-era project by John and Dave, alright, Favreau and Filoni. That's going to be announced also at D23. So that's really just going to show you that Disney finally took somewhat of a stand. At least Bob Iger took somewhat of a defense against Kathleen Kennedy, but it's not enough. She has to be rid of completely and utterly out of Lucasfilm altogether to really send us that there's a little bit more confidence going into this thing. But like I said, guys, I mean, there is 110% a boycott happening, alright? I know even myself here, I would never go to a Disney park again in a very, very long time unless they completely change their ways, drastically reduce their rates, and really just change their entire system with the fast passes. They really have to make some changes there. So, anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. And I will catch you guys next time.